Hello and good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you all to ManageEngine's exclusive webinar on detecting security attacks with correlation. Before I start today's webinar, I would like to ensure that everyone is able to hear my audio or view my shared screen. So if anyone is facing any issues, please please let us know on the chat so that we can look into it for you. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any issues, so let's proceed. So, hello everyone, my name is Priyati and I am a product expert with ManageEngine IT Security Solutions. So, today's webinar is about event correlation, which is one of the most powerful methods to detect threats or anomalies of any kind on your network. Quick incident detection allows you, as an administrator, to jump to action and become more proactive in mitigating these incidents. So, what exactly is event correlation? How exactly does it work? What are the kinds of attacks you can detect? These are just some of the questions we'll be answering today. So, here's the agenda for today's webinar. I'll begin by setting up some context for you. So I'll just provide some pertinent statistics regarding the state of incident detection today. Following that, I'll just give you some of the basics of event correlation and explain how this feature works in EventLog Analyzer. Throughout the rest of the webinar, we will examine some important attack use cases that I have listed on over here and see how you can use EventLog Analyzer to gain useful insights into the occurrence of these attacks. And finally, I'll also explain how you can ensure that the overall number of false positive alerts that you receive are reduced. So then, these are a couple of numbers I felt could really highlight why we need incident detection methods like event correlation today. So overall, the information security industry of today is estimated at around $90 billion. And it is also touted to reach $113 billion by 2020. So the key point to note over here is that there is a shifting trend in how this money is actually being spent. So previously, organizations invested really heavily on prevention technologies. So they were more interested in actually preventing any type of attack. They weren't really considering the fact that they should be looking for attacks. They should be trying to detect if any attack is actually happening, but they were more concentrating, they were more intent on preventing anything from happening at all. But this is not the way that this is not really, yeah. So this is not how it should actually be done. So there's a shifting trend these days towards incident detection and response. So Gartner predicts that this trend will continue over the next few years as well. So this can help us appreciate why we need to focus on incident detection and why we need better methods of incident detection like event correlation. So the next statistic I have for you, there was a study which noted that the average time to detect a data breach is a whopping 205 days. A lot of damage can be done in just a few minutes. So you can only imagine the magnitude of damage caused by an attack that takes this long to detect. Event correlation can help you detect incidents instantly so that you can respond immediately as well and contain any damage before it occurs. Finally, another study by the Ponemon Institute found that on average, a large enterprise received about 17,000 alerts per week, which translates to roughly around 100 alerts an hour. So this naturally causes a lot of alert fatigue, and it isn't practically possible to investigate all of these alerts in a timely fashion. So you may end up missing actual threats among the bunch of whole false positive alerts that you receive. So with event correlation, you can build highly specific use cases. You can build model highly specific security incidents as correlation rules, thereby ensuring you only receive accurate alerts. So we move on now to the basics of event correlation. So before I explain what it is, I'd like to highlight a couple of points. Point number one is that very often, individual events are not enough to provide the whole picture. For instance, let's say a user fails to log on to Windows. Well, there's nothing too suspicious about that. But what if I told you that very same user fails to log on to Windows multiple times and then suddenly manages a successful logon? So when you put all of it together, a larger picture emerges. So this attack that I just described is what we called a brute force attack. This brings us to point number two. Attacks and threats, they are most often complex incidents. They don't just involve a single event, but a sequence of multiple events. Fortunately for us, all of these events leave log trails. And this is where event correlation comes in. Event correlation is a technique that processes logs from various sources on your network, and it connects related information to form these log trails and identifies threats. So how does it know which log trails are threats? It makes use of correlation rules. So a correlation rule is simply a sequence of logs or a sequence of events which indicate some sort of threat or attack or compromise of some sort. So all it does is, so this is how the event correlation feature works on EventLog Analyzer. It collects logs from heterogeneous devices on your network. So it collects logs from your critical servers and workstations. As you can see, these various log sources mentioned over here, it collects logs from user events. It collects user events or file actions. It collects logs from your firewalls, your routers and switches, as well as your critical application servers, such as your web servers or your database servers. So after it collects all these logs, it starts correlating them. It starts identifying log trails and matching these trails with the correlation rules, so that once it finds a match, it's able to detect an attack pattern. So the second that it finds a match and detects an attack pattern, EventLog Analyzer instantly sends you an alert either via SMS or email, and it also generates an in-depth aggregated report. So the aggregated report collects all of the events that make up the attack. It collects the whole sequence and presents it to you in one single clean report, as we'll see a little later on in this webinar. And you can use this report to gain insights into the attack. You can use it to analyze what went wrong, where, and much more. So I'd just like to make a note at this point. Those of you who are using EventLog Analyzer uh, with a build lower than 11,080, you would need to upgrade it to 11,080 or later to make use of the enhanced correlation engine. Okay, so let's start putting all of this together and discuss this in the form of a use case. So let's consider a malicious insider who would like to breach a critical server within your network. So this, let's say that this critical server contains some confidential financial information. So obviously you'd like to protect it. You'd like to ensure that no one accesses this server and steals your financial data. But let's say there is a malicious insider who wants to breach this server, and he would also like to do this without being detected. So let's assume that he is able to obtain privileged user credentials, or even a privileged user is actually helping him out. So, but the privileged account still wouldn't serve his purpose because these accounts are usually heavily monitored. So, what he can do instead is use the admin account to create a backdoor into the network. So a backdoor is basically an unnoticed or unmonitored network entry point which is created by the hacker. So once he is able to create the backdoor, uh, he goes ahead and creates a temporary account for himself. So this temporary account acts as his backdoor, and he sets up the necessary permissions for this account, and then he logs on to the target server which contains the financial data using the new account. So finally, he carries out his intended malicious activity. And this activity could be anything. For instance, he may install a malicious service, which may be used to send the confidential financial files to another location, or it could record activity on the server and send this back to the attacker. You get the idea. So after the deed is done, he goes ahead and deletes the account. So in this way, he tries to ensure that he's leaving no trace behind. So how can you configure this, all of this, as a correlation rule? So on EventLog Analyzer, we have a predefined rule for you. So I'll explain how it has been framed. So the simplest method, you see there are a lot of steps on here, but the simplest method to check for any anomalous accounts or backdoor accounts on your network is to check for any accounts that are created and deleted within a short span of time. So I'll just try simulating this situation for you. This is a domain controller that I have. So I'm just going to use this to create an account. So let's say that I'm the attacker and I have logged in using the privileged credentials. So now I go over to my ADUC and I create a new user. Okay, so let's name her Jane Doe. I'm just providing some details like the password, and in fact, I'm just making it easy for myself. I'm going to say that I don't need to change my password at my next logon. So finally, I've created the user. So this is the user that I've created, and I'm going to be using this account to carry out my malicious activity. So I can just set up any required, any required permissions. I can add myself to any specific groups. I can set up specific permissions or apply some settings. Okay, and once I do this, I can go over and log on to some other server. So let's assume now that Jane Doe is logging into the critical server, the financial data server. And like I said, the user carries out the intended activity. Okay, and once all of this is done, I come on over back to this privileged account and simply delete the account. So now the aim is that no one should really find out about this account, but we all know that even though I've created a deleted an account, there are always logs to detail all of this activity. Okay, so This is the event viewer. You can see that all of the logs will usually be collected over here. Anyway, so this is how the use case goes on. So as I said, the correlation rule is simply consisting of two basic actions, the account creation and deletion within a short period of time. So, okay, so once this happens, as soon as EventLog Analyzer detects this activity, it'll go ahead and send you an alert in the form of an email or SMS. So the second this happens, you can instantly go over to EventLog Analyzer and uh, find out exactly what has happened. So the second that you realize that there is an anomalous account on your network, you can instantly launch an investigation using EventLog Analyzer, which you see on the screen over here. So the server that I mentioned is added for monitoring over here. Anyway, so now to see the correlation reports, you can go over to the correlation tab of the product. So this is the correlation feature. Now the correlation rule that I was talking about is an anomalous user account change. So as I mentioned, the backdoor account is basically an anomaly because it was an account that existed for a really short period of time on your network. So it's an anomaly that needs to be investigated. So you can simply come on over here and check the details of the user account that was created and deleted. Okay, so you can see you can always adjust the time period of the report using the calendar widget. You can mention time period as broad or short as you like. I can either say today or I can say the last month. So you can see there are a lot of things you can do with this report. There are a lot of features with the report. You can see that all the details are simply mentioned uh, over here. And of course, if you'd like to add or remove any specific details onto the report, you can always use the column selector icon. You can select which details need to be specified on the report. So as I said, there are basically two events that make up this correlation rule. An account is created and deleted. So you can see that these are mentioned in the add or remove columns pop-up box. So you can specify which details you wish would be mentioned on the report by using the check boxes. And if you would like, as you can see, there are two target user fields, but I would like a different name for it. So you can simply use the pencil icon, display name. I can say target user account deleted. Yes, so once I do this, I can save it and you can see that the report is immediately updated. Okay, so and also you can use the best part of the report, in fact, is the view history feature. So you can use view history to view an entire timeline of the attack. You can see when each action occurred, when each event occurred. You can see the time at which it happened. You can use details to look into the specific log details. You can see the user responsible. You can see what object was created, which is the name, which is the temporary backdoor account. So you can really get a lot of details by simply using the timeline view feature, and all of this is included in a single report. So as I said, this is an aggregated report. It aggregates all of the events that make up the rule, that make up the correlation rule into a single report, and provides a complete picture of how this attack happened. Okay, so of course you can export the report at any time in the CSV or PDF format. You can schedule this report so that you can get these details directly to your inbox as per a specific schedule. So there are a lot, and you can see the trend in this graphical part of the report. You can see the trend of attacks. You can see how many events were recorded on a specific date and much more. So there are a lot of things that you can do with just this single report. And of course, if you want to manage an alert, if you'd like to manage each an incident, you can use the inbuilt incident management feature that we have on EventLog Analyzer. So this is the console. You can see that all the alerts are raised with a high priority. You can actually assign each alert to a specific user. You can update the status of the ticket. You can say in progress. You can add any specific notes. So you can actually, this is a complete cycle, almost a complete cycle. As soon as the incident is detected, you can launch an investigation. You can check the report, the correlation report. You can check all that is all there is to know about how the attack happened. If you would like to conduct any more forensics, you can even use EventLog Analyzer search feature, the log forensics feature. You can find out much more about what the specific user, the target user, did. You can find out what the attacker did using the temporary backdoor account. You can manage the overall incident as a ticket by assigning it to a specific owner, updating its status. So, like I said, it's a complete package that you get with EventLog Analyzer. So anyway, now that I have shown you some of the main features, let me talk a little bit about a couple of other security incidents as well. Okay, so we have about 25 predefined correlation rules on the latest build, and some of the useful ones which I've highlighted over here. So you can detect typical ransomware activities. So now there are thousands of, there are thousands and much more, hundreds of thousands in fact, types of ransomware out there. But when it comes down to it, all ransomware attacks follow a few simple common steps. Okay, so you can use EventLog Analyzer's correlation feature to try and identify these common steps. So what are these common steps? All A typical ransomware attack progresses by starting a process on any one infected system, and this process then proceeds to modify, which is to say encrypt, a bunch of files on that system. Okay, so you can use correlation to detect when there is a process being started, and then you can go on, and then it can go on to detect that process actually modifying a whole bunch of files. And similarly, we have a rule to help you detect malicious URL attacks. So malicious URL attacks is basically when you receive a series of malicious URL requests from a single source IP address. So you can find these reports as well on the correlation tab. So the ransomware report is available under ransomware attacks. You can see details about how typical ransomware activity was identified. You can see that on 5th December, a specific Windows process started and then modified a whole bunch of files. And if you'd like, you can always find out the details. As I said, all the details are available in one report. So I mentioned some time back that you can also use correlation to reduce the number of false positives. So how do you do that? Now, if you'd like to see how exactly a rule is configured, you can always go over to Manage Rules. You can select the specific rule from the menus shown over here on the screen, or you can search for it using the search feature. Say ransomware, possible ransomware activity, and click on Update Rule. So as I said, there are two basic events that make up this rule, which is a new Windows process being started, followed within a short period of time by several files being modified. You can see that there is a threshold limit specified for this event, saying that it happens at least 15 times. So if you'd like to reduce false positives, you can always make the rule more specific. You can add more actions to it, for instance, so that you can actually reduce the number of alerts that you're getting. You can reduce the number of generalized alerts that you are getting by adding some further actions, making the use case, making this rule more defined. Or you can adjust the parameters. You can adjust the number of minutes within which one event should follow the next. One event should follow the previous event. So in this way, you can always ensure that all the correlation rules are updated and match your specific business scenario. So they always match the specific environment in which your network is operating. You can ensure that you always get highly customized rules to match your own situation. And in this way, you can ensure you always get quick and accurate alerts with EventLog Analyzer. So now that we've seen a few use cases and we have seen the various features that EventLog Analyzer has for you, I'd like to close by just reiterating that event correlation is one of the best incident detection methods we have. So we can detect loads of attack scenarios by using correlation rules. I mean, the possibilities are virtually limitless. So that's about it from my side today. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.